I think it's time to do something different because doing the same things sometimes doesn't work. In fact, many call it insanity. So today I'm so excited to have this conversation because we're going to talk about gutsy moves. I'm pretty sure this will help you get unstuck and get into what you want. Welcome back to season 2 of Leading Intentionally, where we dive deep into the core of what it takes to lead with purpose, passion, and presence. I'm your host, Carmen Paredes, and in this season, we are exploring 3 transformative themes: enduring mindset, exceptional leadership, and empowering your essence. This season, we are on a journey to uncover the mental fortitude required to endure through challenges while maintaining a vision for success. We'll decode the elements that elevate leaders from great to exceptional, those qualities that inspire, motivate, and create lasting impact. And we're embracing the power of authenticity, learning to own your essence in a way that empowers yourself and others. In each episode, we'll share insights, stories, and practical tips to help you transform your leadership style and thrive in both your personal and professional life. So whether you are leading a team, managing a project, or steering your own career, get ready to elevate your approach and lead intentional. Let's get started. Today, I'm so excited to have with us Laura Ora. She is a vibrant speaker, mindset coach, and the host of the Gutsy Podcast, a top 100 podcast. She teaches people how to own what they actually want and shift the mindset junk to get that. Through her activating speeches, Laura Ora helps audiences stop overthinking and overcomplicating their next move, allowing them to get what they truly want. As an all-around visionary, Laura Ora is the first to push you out of your comfort zone and the last to hug you as you head to the next level of your life. Let her guide you to stop fighting yourself and start embracing a life where you feel alive in. Laura Ora, welcome to the show.
Hey, Carmen. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have this conversation. The very first time I saw your brand and what you talk about, I'm like, yes, give me that, please. And I mean, anyone who knows me knows that even though I have never said it the way that you so beautifully describe it, I'm all about making gutsy moves. So let's get people starting with this movement in 2025 because, you know, as we are in this episode, it's like the beginning of the year. So what a better way to start the year. So why don't we get right into it and share with those who don't intuitively know what gutsy means. What does it mean to you?
Yeah. So I love this. On my podcast, one of my favorite questions that I ask my guests and what I ask all of my guests is, what does gutsy mean to you? And I wanted to really analyze what that meant, because gutsy can mean really big moves, but it can also mean smaller, maybe seemingly insignificant moves as well. Mm-hmm. And so I analyzed hundreds and hundreds of answers and putting in my own world and expertise as well. And what it boils down to is gutsy is a silent strength and a bold move forward.
I love that.
In every situation, it's a silent strength and a bold move forward. And it's really about getting super clear about what it is that you want and then giving yourself the ability to take action towards it. Yeah. You know, it's combating what I like to call the mind junk, right? All the stuff in your head, all the things that talk you out of it. I'm too old, I'm too young, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm too late. I don't have enough time. I mean, we could have stacks and stacks of papers with sayings on it, right? But being able to recognize when that's happening and being willing to use different tools and techniques to shift that so that you can start taking action towards the thing that you really want instead of moving away from it. Gutsy moves is nothing more than honoring who you are and what it is that you truly want so that you can go get the things that you desire. I mean, it's possible for every single person.
I love how we're demystifying this because I feel like people can get intimidated just by the name because it's like, oh, does that mean I have to go do something super scary? No, I like the thought that sparked when you were speaking was, and something that I do personally, and something I'm writing about. 2025, I'm gonna launch my solo book, and one of the things I'm talking about is having an invincible mindset. And invincibility for me is nothing more than break to the inertia when you're stuck, and it can be just with one step. And that's exactly what you're talking about. It doesn't have to be something scary. It's just get into action and follow that thing that you want. And yes, because of all the things that we tell ourselves that you call mind jog, like we don't do.
Yep. I mean, it's that silent strength. That's those conversations that you're having with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
That's that back and forth. That's the questioning. That's the, well, I'll do it tomorrow, or maybe I'll get around to it another day, or oh, it's too gray outside, or I don't have enough time, and all this stuff, right? But when you boil it down, moving forward requires action.
Mm-hmm.
We can think about the things that we want all day long, but until we take action towards it, it just stays this desire, this unfulfilled desire.
Yeah.
And so being willing to recognize, like, hey, I've got something in here, and I know it feels big in the moment, and maybe I don't know how to figure it all out, but what's one next step that I can take? What's
Yeah.
one thing that I can focus on? And if we break it down into these bite-sized pieces, then we create momentum. And when we create momentum, we create clarity. When we get clarity, we get, like, things just start moving, right? We often feel like we have to have it all figured out to be able to do anything.
Or it needs to be perfect from the
Yeah.
get go.
When
Yeah.
really all you need to know is what direction are we headed in, and what's one step that I can take towards that.
Yeah.
That's it.
I
We
love
make
it.
it so much more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, myself included. Listen, I'm not excluding myself from this
So
conversation.
let's talk about that, because I mean, in my leadership values, integrity is right there on the top. It's one of my pillars of my framework, and I define integrity as walking your talk. Right. So in order to guide people towards making gutsy move, you must have made gutsy move yourself.
I might dub the queen of making gutsy moves at this point. So, I mean, honestly, Carmen, one of my first career based gutsy moves
Mhm.
was quitting my full-time job
Mhm.
when I was
Been there, done that.
when I was 6.5 months pregnant
Oh, okay. I haven't done that.
to start my first business. That was absolutely one of my first gutsy moves.
Yes.
And, I've been an entrepreneur for 17 and a half years. My first business was in branding. I ran an agency for 16 of those years. And I just knew early on, I was pregnant with our little baby boy, who is now 17. I started my business right, like I was, like I said, 6.5 months pregnant, and I had him right afterwards. So, like, there are big milestone birthdays that come together, but it's been so interesting because I'm like, early on, I knew, I'm like, oh, there's something bigger calling. There's something bigger calling. And so I think that was one of my first big gutsy moves, was starting that agency. And, obviously it worked out because I ran it for 16 years and just sold it last year to go full time, as a keynote speaker. So that's my most recent gutsy move, was selling that agency and leaving an entire industry and basically starting over in something new. And so those are big gutsy moves. But, gutsy moves for me have also been, being willing to be the first person to start a conversation around something that's difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Being willing to raise my hand in a meeting and say, hey, I have something to add here. Getting myself out of bed when I was at the lowest of anxiety and depression.
Mm-hmm.
It's a gutsy move to get out of bed when you feel like there's nothing to get out of bed for.
I have goosebumps all over, by the way.
It's and reciprocal right here. It's in these silent moments, often when you're with yourself and your thoughts, where you're like, I'm faced with a decision right now. I'm at a fork in the road, and sometimes it's big stuff, like, selling a business, and sometimes it's small stuff, like using my voice, being willing to be seen, to be heard, to say, I'm going to wear a hot pink shirt today. And everyone might think that this is too much or too loud, but I like this for me. That's a gutsy move.
Yeah.
So
And you know what? Sorry, like, because it's tied to that. It's like some things that I have done, other people think are gutsy, and maybe I don't, because it's just part of who I am, and it wasn't a big deal for me to do it. But what I found is that, if it's really scary, and it doesn't have to be scary because it's this huge step or this huge leap, but because it touches one of your insecurities and one of your wounds and one of the things that you really need to work on. And if you don't, what happens is that it keeps coming back. It keeps coming back louder and stronger until you cannot not do it.
Yep.
And that's what I have found in my life.
Absolutely. So when you're saying that, an example comes to mind is asking for help is a gutsy move.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you've been a people pleaser, you've taken on way too many things, you carry everything and everyone's responsibilities, you feel like it all falls on you. Being willing to say, hey, I actually need some help. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have enough time. I feel like I'm drowning. And actually vocalizing that and allowing somebody in your world to step in, that's a gutsy move. It's getting past this point that typically stops you. It's being willing to lean into something that's uncomfortable, and it's not always because it's earth-shattering, but sometimes because it's just unfamiliar. It's new to you. It feels big because it's new to you.
Yeah.
It feels uncomfortable because you're not used to it. But my gosh, every single time, promise you, every single time that you lean into this, you will be so amazed at the support in yourself, the self-validation of following through with something for yourself, and being able to turn around and be like, yeah, I did that.
Yeah.
Like, it's so fulfilling, and it just feeds your desire to want to make more gutsy moves, in my opinion.
For me, one of the hardest things to do was to put myself in a place of vulnerability.
Yeah.
That was a big thing. So I'm an Enneagram 8, for anyone who knows the Enneagram. So that's the protector. And you basically build this fortress around you to avoid being hurt, because you've been hurt a lot. And so being vulnerable, and it wasn't necessarily in asking for help, but putting myself in a position where I wasn't the expert, or I wasn't gonna for sure win, was really, really hard. And definitely rejection was like, no going down that pathway. But my dreams of being, a TEDx speaker, a public speaker, needed me to be vulnerable. Not only because of the stories I share, but because, you're standing on stage and you're not everyone's gonna love you. Some people, are not gonna like you, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And what would have happened if I didn't answer the call and decided to make that gutsy move? I cannot even imagine, because this is the happiest I've ever been in my life. And now I get to transform, inspire people to go follow their dreams. But for the longest time, I always wanted to. Since I was a little girl, I used to study practicing that. I was given this big dissertation in like Taylor Swift size field stadiums.
I love it.
And just the thought, not even like standing on the stage, but it was the thought of, oh, somebody's not going to like me. And now my mindset is, if one person likes me, if I can transform the life of one person, that's it. That's all I need to. And it changes your perspective completely. But I totally, I'm totally like follow what you're saying in terms of, maybe for some people it's like, what? Like, I've always been so vulnerable. Well, I didn't have the support growing up to be vulnerable, to open myself. So for me, that was. And so I just want to make sure people get all examples, because, for someone starting a business might not be earth-shattering, because they were brought up in a way of, entrepreneurs, so who knows what, like,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, vulnerability, let's be honest, has not always been celebrated. It's been seen as a sign of weakness, or you don't know what you're doing, or you kind of expose yourself in a lot of different ways, right? Vulnerability, though, is a superpower. I know that you've experienced that. I most certainly have. Vulnerability is a superpower. It's where people come together. It's where we take down those walls and we find relatability with one another and to say, hey, oh my gosh, I thought I was the only one that felt like this. Oh my gosh, other people do too.
Yeah.
Hey, I thought I was the only one that had this kind of idea. Oh, there's other people that could help me. Vulnerability is a superpower because it brings you closer to the people that want to support you. And to your point, it allows you to have the biggest impact that you're intended to make in this lifetime. You know, I think back to, you know, had I not quit that job, you know, by the way, it was the phone book. I worked at the phone book designing ads.
Pages and
Yeah, I think back, had I not left that, none of this path and journey that I have been on would have been possible. You know, I was fortunate to be able to impact a lot of small businesses by helping them create brands through the team that I led. And, you know, could they have existed without me? Absolutely. But all of those stories would be different right now. Everything would look different right now. And I just think it's super cool that when you answer your call, your impact just ripples into the world. And it ripples inside of you. You know, not only are you impacting the people outside of you, but you're impacting yourself. Let's not discount that. Giving yourself the opportunity to have joy and fulfillment and love what you do and you know, experiment and find things out about yourself. You go on this journey and it's impactful. It really is.
Let's not discount that many of us were raised to feel bad about feeling good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And so I think a gutsy move is also to give yourself permission to enjoy what you're doing. Like, you don't have to be miserable through life, you know, doing something that you hate or being with people you cannot stand just because it's supposed to be hard. It's not supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be joyful and easy. And the minute I was able to click that in my brain and said, like, it's okay to be happy. It's okay to love what you do. It's okay to make money fulfilling your passion.
It's that
like,
right there.
Why it took me almost 5 decades to figure this out, I don't know. But
well, I don't know about you, Carmen, but I grew up in a house of scarcity. I grew up where money was the root of all evil. Money meant you were a bad person. Money, you know, as soon as it came in the door, it went out the door. I grew up thinking money was awful. I did not have a good relationship with it. And it's taking me, I mean, by the time this airs, I will be 40. And it's taken me just about every moment leading up to that age to learn that actually money is an amplifier. And if you're a great person and you have good intentions, money amplifies that.
Absolutely.
It gives you access. It gives you the ability to support people and things in your own life in a way that's really beautiful, rich in a different way. You know, rich, yes, can mean numbers, but rich in life, rich in values, rich in the ability to impact. Like, I'm like, hold on a second. I was fed a lie. And, you know, that was based off of what they
didn't know
knew
any
too.
better.
They didn't know. They didn't.
Yes.
They also didn't do the work to shift that narrative.
Yeah.
I did.
Yes.
You know, I think that we live in a lifetime right now of cycle breakers. People that are changing this narrative so that our children and grandchildren and so on and so forth have a different narrative to go off of. I mean, imagine if more great people had more access. My gosh, we could do so many more things on this earth, but it's got to start with changing our individual stories and narratives.
Yeah. And, you know, and I want to tie it back to leadership just because the audience, and when I'm teaching leadership from within, the first pillar is to know that in order to lead others effectively, you need to learn to lead yourself exceptionally. And for me, that means that you need to work on your mind junk, because the way you show up to work is the way that others are going to perceive you, and you're going to influence the interactions and whether or not you're going to be able to inspire them as the reflection of the work that you've done in yourself. So if you're thinking this has nothing to do with leadership, it has everything to do with leadership, because a gutsy move can be to stand up for your team and be there when they need you. A gutsy move can be to, you know, put your foot down if an unethical thing is happening in the company. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, it's being willing to have hard conversations. It's being willing to say, hey, you know, the team's got this idea and I'm willing to take it as far as it needs to go to get it implemented. You know, I'm seeing something that's not right. It's unethical and I need to stand up for somebody. You know, it's, you put yourself out there. When you're a leader, I mean, all eyes are pointed at you.
Yeah.
People are looking at you and you lead by example. And so if you're holding back and if you're timid and you're not standing up for things and you're allowing things to skate by, the team takes notice to that. Yeah. It impacts the behavior and it tells the team, hey, this is what we should do too. Or it's going to create conflict and eventually something's going to need to be said. You know what I mean? So, you know, you got to be really willing to own your role as a leader and say, hey, people are looking up to me and I need to set that example. And when I can show them that it's okay to make gutsy moves, then they feel more safe and open to do the same for themselves. And what does that do for the team? Innovations happen, efficiency boosts, you know, teamwork comes together. You have this great camaraderie within the group. I mean, it's just, it's amazing. The energy completely shifts.
And trust, right? Because when you stand up for them, when you show up authentically, when you care, because, you know, all this, because we don't live in a society where all these things are mainstream, right? Like leaders are supposed to follow the agenda that's been given to them and just comply. But it takes a gutsy leader to have the discernment and stand for their team. Like I remember, like people used to joke that I was like a grizzly bear when it came to protecting my team, and I'm like, you bet I am. They are my children, even if they were older than me, right? Because we spend so much time in the office. Like their lives here, when it comes to their professional life, is under my care. Yes. And yes, I am going to protect them and defend them, even if that meant to embrace conflict with somebody else, because sometimes the gutsy move is not to avoid the conflict, but to embrace it when it's the right thing to do, right? So absolutely has everything to do with leadership to be gutsy.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It makes it moves things forward. You know, it creates opportunity.
You should make a brand like I'm a gutsy leader.
I'm a gutsy leader. Hey, I can make that happen. I'll tell you what, one wonderful thing about having a branding background is that skill comes in handy more often than not. So
like I'm like sitting here is like, oh my God, or like on a casual day, I totally would have wore a hat or teacher said, I'm a gutsy leader. Don't mess with me. So you mentioned that your birthday, or you'll be 40 by the time this airs. So are you a Sagittarius?
I am.
Ooh, that's probably why we get so.
Yeah. When is your birthday?
The 2nd.
Okay. So so I'm the 18th.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
It comes with our free-spirited, adventurous, outspoken. If we've got something to say, we're going to say it, but we're going to say it in a really eloquent way.
So let me tie that to the podcast. And, you know, because of all the characteristics that you and I know Sagittarius are, it probably, and anyone who's into the zodiac probably is going to be like, oh, that's what's so easy for you to do gutsy moves. And since this is something you coach people about, like, can you come up with an example? Maybe you don't know your clients' birthdays, but can you come to an example of someone who's like a Cancer or Pisces, you know, an air or a water sign, that what kind of gutsy move they have taken?
Well, I mean, I can say that as we are a fire sign, right? So we just naturally come with a little extra oomph. Leo, Sagittarius, and Aries Aries are our fire sisters and brothers. You know, what I'll say about this is I can acknowledge and recognize that this comes a little bit easier to some people than others. So we naturally have a little bit more of a bold personality, whereas some others don't. And that's not a right or wrong. It just is, right? And so when I'm working with somebody that is not quite as forward, because I'm pretty forward. When I'm working with somebody that's not quite as forward, I am very, and this comes back to leadership too, and knowing the people that's across the table from you, is you have to tap into what is their what is their capacity to expand in this moment? If you push somebody too hard, too quickly, they're shutting down. So if I'm talking with somebody, let's say that does run a business or is thinking about running a business, if I'm like, and not that I would say this, but just as an extreme example, if I'm like, quit your job next week and start the business and just do it. First of all, that's not great advice. I would never say that. But in this case, it's like that person might be like, oh my gosh, like my safety and security, I don't know if I can do this, right? There's too many what ifs and questions. Where if I say, okay, you're at your job right now and you want to start a business, amazing. Is your job right now where you're at in a place where, you feel good and this is somewhere you could stay for a little while? Absolutely. Yeah, good. Okay. So what's one step that you could do to start your business on the side? Could you register the LLC? Could you pick a name? Could you choose the type of product or service that you want to add, right? So it's like baby steps in and guiding people in a way that stretches them without shutting them down. So if you're not one to just like go all in, that's okay. All we would need to do is just increase the capacity for your risk taking, for your willingness to try something or to get out of your comfort zone or to step into vulnerability a little bit. We don't need to go all the way. We just need to go one step towards that way. So it's not a specific zodiac, but No.
That's perfect because, you mentioned this and I remember, having a team of 50 people and knowing that there were few of my team members that I could say like, okay, go present to the board tomorrow. And they were like, oh my God, butterflies, but yes. And, most of them would be like, no. But, for them, a gutsy move could be like, on your desk, take care of the presentation. Like you don't have to speak about it, but like, can you do the graphics or something like they haven't done? And being able to recognize, I love how you said it, the capacity to expand of a person, of, leaders here, of your team at any given moment, it's definitely, gold. Because if you push someone too hard, too quickly, they're going to collapse. Yep. But we all want to expand. We all have that intrinsic need to grow. And I always say that's the role of a leader, is to enable that in your team, help them grow, but at what rate? So I love how you put that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I work with some people that I can just tell right away. And if I'm not sure, it's always great to just clarify.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm sensing that you might be able to go a little bit further, or you might be able to take on a little bit more. Am I picking up on that right? And they're either going to be like, yeah, I work a little bit faster. What else you got? Or they're going to be like, actually, no, this is pretty good. Right? Just have that open communication with them. Or you can say, you know what? I'm sensing that this might be a good place. Is this enough for you to focus on right now? Or do you need something additional? Just having that open conversation. It's so beautiful because people will tell you what they need, especially when they're given the space to be able to say it. A lot of times they don't want to initiate those conversations themselves because they don't want to disappoint you. They don't want to let you down. They don't want to, seem like they can't do their job. So if you're just like, hey, here's what I'm sensing. What do you think? And they're going to be like, yep, nope, this feels like a really good fit. Let me focus on this. So being willing to have that conversation, I mean, you save both of you a lot of time and energy.
I love it. And then you can spend more energy doing gutsy moves.
Yeah.
Okay, so Laura, all right, we're coming to the end of the episode. What is one thing you want to make sure our audience remembers from this conversation?
I want you to remember that gutsy gets to mean whatever it needs to be in the season that you're in right now. And that it's not something to be measured or to be compared, to be judged. It's just to say, you know what? I came up against something and I was willing to lean in. My friend, congratulations. You just made a gutsy move.
I love it.
You just showed yourself that you can and you will do the hard thing or the interesting thing or the new thing. It's not to be measured. It's just to be leaned into.
Perfect. I don't have anything else to add because that was beautiful. So where can people find you?
Yeah, lauraaura.com. It's LAURA.com. That's the hub for all things me.
Beautiful. We'll put the links to all things Laura Aura in the description of the podcast. And thank you so much. So excited to have you in this new season, and share the podcast with someone who needs to be making gutsy moves, and let us know how you're doing your own gutsy move. Thank you. And I'll see you next week.